thank you again, everybody, for taking the time to join us this evening. Happy Pride. I can't believe we're already through the month of June, but it's really exciting that everybody joined us tonight. And we have a really special version of our supporter call tonight. We're going to hear from some amazing organizations doing work in the LGBTQ community, as well as hearing from Mayor Pete and Chasten, and then one of our endorsed candidates, Malcolm Kenyatta. So we've got quite a few folks that we want you to hear and support. But first up, I want to turn it over to Alex Roque from the Forney Center, who will talk a little bit about the history of the center and the work that they're doing and how we can potentially be more helpful.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Mayor Pete and Chasten. I'm Alex Roque. I'm the Executive Director of the Forney Center. The Forney Center is named in memory of Forney, a queer young Black person who was murdered on the streets due to a lack of family acceptance, due to homophobia and transphobia at home. And in Ali's memory, we have committed to their care and connection to homeless, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender young people. These are young people who are rejected by their families because of their identity, because their families cannot accept who they are or who they love. Our work sees over 2,000 young people a year across 18 sites in New York City, offering over 30,000 services, anything from meals to showers to mental health and medical services, substance use services, and education and career services to help young people overcome the traumas of family rejection, overcome the harms of street homelessness, and begin to rebuild their lives. As Chasten can tell you from his visit last year, our young people are incredibly bright and resilient and have such a capacity to love and care and provide a community for each other, especially during this time of COVID, especially during this time of demand for social justice. Our work is committed to helping our young people overcome the challenges and begin a brighter future. And we have a number of ways to be involved virtually as Americans, as people who are called to stay at home. We have learned to work from home. We have learned to learn from home and attend school. And now we have the opportunity to learn to help from home and to make a difference in the lives of organizations and young people like who attend the Forney Center for Services. If you visit our website at aliforneycenter.org, you can learn about our virtual volunteer programs or a number of virtual volunteer programs for organizations across the country. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Alex. So next up, we have Joe Hawkins from the Oakland LGBTQ Center. Joe, you want to kick it over to you to tell us a little bit about the work and how we can be helpful and be a value add to you.
Hi, Chasten. Thank you for stopping by when you were in town. The Oakland LGBTQ Community Center is dedicated to enhancing and sustaining the well-being of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender individuals, our families and allies, by providing educational, social, and health-related activities, programs, and services. Our center is new. Relatively new. We've been around for about 3 years. I and my co-founder, Jeffrey Myers, founded the center. We're both African-American gay men. We are one of the few all-inclusive LGBTQ centers, not just in the state of California, where there are the most queer centers, but in the country founded by Black people. We provide a broad range of services from youth programming all the way to elder services. When we first opened, Oakland was the only major city in the state that did not have a community center. And over the years, we have become very popular in our city, especially amongst people of color. And unfortunately, just recently, we had a hate crime just Saturday where a guy pulled up and smashed all our windows out. But luckily, the community stepped up in an amazing way, including sports teams, and they're paying for all of the damages that were done. But we're very fortunate to be here in Oakland, and we're very fortunate to be on this Zoom call.
Well, and Joe, one more time, if you could tell us where folks, if they wanted to support and find out more, where to go one more time?
on our website, you can visit our website at oaklandlgbtqcenter.org or on Instagram at Oakland LGBTQ Center.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And next up, we have HR Young from the South Bend LGBTQ Center. So we've got centers from across the country, but HR would love to hear about the work that you're doing in South Bend.
Yes, thank you for having me on tonight. I'm happy to talk about the LGBTQ Center that's in the hometown of Pete and Chasten. So we're happy to be here to talk about the LGBTQ Center here. This year we're celebrating our 15th anniversary. We started off as a bookstore that transformed into a resource center, and like many other LGBTQ resource centers in the country, we're here to support. We're here to provide services for the LGBTQ community, from youngsters to the senior citizens within the community as well. We provide support groups for the adults, as well as support groups for youth, and support for parents, those who are parents of LGBTQ youth, as well as those who are LGBTQ themselves and they are parents. And we're also just a connector of other resources. So if you're in Northern Indiana and you need access to healthcare or mental health or a lawyer or something, we are there for you. We are there to make those connections to help you find those resources as best you can. We also provide a lot of educational resources and outreach to the community, the LGBTQ community, but also the greater community as well. We are the only LGBTQ center in Northern Indiana. We also serve a few counties in Southern Michigan as well. So we're happy to do the work that we're doing and excited to be here. So. And for more information about what we do and how you can help support our mission, you can go to thelgbtqcenter.org. We lucked out on nabbing that domain name above everybody else, and I don't know how that happened, but there you go. And if you search on any of the Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook and search for the LGBTQ Center, that's us.
Great. Well, HR, Joe, and Alex, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And to all the folks on the line, let's please do lift up these organizations. We'll also follow up and make sure that you have the information on how you can be more involved and be supportive. So thank you guys again for joining us. Well, so now with that, I'm excited to announce Mayor Pete and Chasten, who have joined us here. Again, it's a historic year with the anniversary of the Supreme Court ruling and an ability to reflect over the last month that we've had in the historic presidential campaign we were able to have. So excited to kick it over to you two to speak to the group. Thanks.
Thanks, Marcus. And again, I want to thank Alex and Joe and HR for the phenomenal work that each of your organizations is doing. And, this wonderful community of supporters who joins us on these calls. You've been there for so many campaigns and candidates, including one we're going to meet in a few minutes. Also, so important that we be there for causes and efforts. And I'm proud for us to be standing with LGBTQ people coast to coast. And these are three examples of deserving organizations among those doing such important work. Happy Pride to everybody. Hard to believe we are at the midpoint of the year and therefore the end of June. A year that's brought so many changes, so many challenges to this country, but also I think a call for all of us to find new ways to support each other, and those values, those rules of the road that held us together on our campaign and that are a big part of Win the Era are at stake everywhere we turn. It's also a time to really reflect on Pride. This is this month, 5 years since the decision that brought marriage equality to the land. This year, a momentous decision from the Supreme Court, but we know that we still need an Equality Act. We know that we still have a crisis of, in particular, Black trans women experiencing and exposed to violence. We know that conversion therapy is still being foisted on kids around the country. We know how much work there is to do, and so there's a lot to celebrate, but a lot to get to work on. And I think this year in particular has called us to make sure that in the spirit of allyship, that's been such an important part of the queer story, that all of us, and in particular white allies, are stepping up and doing everything that we can do to make this a country where actions as well as words demonstrate that Black lives are valued equally here. And we know that's a journey that's not going to happen on its own. We've got so much to do. But usually when I'm on these things, people are always saying, "Where's Chasten? What's Chasten up to?" I think it's the more popular member of the household. So let me invite you to say a word or two of hello. I know everybody's excited to see it.
Well, Alex, Joe, and HR, thank you, all three of you, for all of the work you're doing, both in New York and Oakland, and right here in South Bend. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you this evening. I have to say that normally Pete is the one doing Zooms in the evening, and I'm downstairs dog sitting. So Truman and Buddy are here with us in the office, so there might be some interruptions. But happy Pride to everyone. This last day of Pride, even though it's the last day of Pride Month, we're going to carry our pride into next month. And like Pete said, there's so many reasons for us to stop, take stock of both just the celebration of our existence this month. For many people, especially I just think about me and my story growing up in Northern Michigan, wondering, how's it all going to add up? Is there ever going to be a future for me? And then I went out there on the campaign trail and met so many people who shared that similar story. Pride is just an opportunity for us to pause and reflect and to celebrate our existence, because we're literally alive, and you should celebrate that. And then it's also a time for us to roll up our sleeves and do the work. It's also a time for us to call out our allies and our friends and say, I need you to join me. I need you to do the work. And this year, I believe, especially, it's very important that white allies especially are thinking about ways in which they're showing up and doing the work. Meme tweeting and memeing is not really advocacy. That's not really doing the work. It's showing up for other people, whether you're out there marching in the streets or calling your elected officials, or even deciding to run for school board because queer youth in your community need someone on the school board advocating for them. It's a time for us to think about how we want to be of service, how we are going to be of service to other people. And it's always just a privilege to be here, to one, celebrate that existence and think like, wow, we made it out. You're on the other side. It really did get better. And then two, think about what we're going to do with, that time, that privilege, that, all of the abilities that we have to go out there and affect change. So excited to be with all of you here this evening, and excited to get to spend one extra hour with Pete tonight.
While we've got you, I think it's a good time to talk a little bit about your experiences on the trail, because I was always blown away whenever those rare moments we actually got to be together while I was running, and you spent a lot of that time visiting centers like the centers we're featuring tonight, and I know those stories made a big impression on me. I'm sure folks would be really interested to hear about just where you went and what you learned and who you met.
I mean, I met so many people on the trail. The Ali Forney Center in New York was one of the very first centers I ever toured. I made lunch there in the kitchen with some other folks at the center, and it was one of the first times that I actually got to sit down with a table of queer youth. And I think I told you this story when we met up, but I will never forget the young man who walked up to me and said, "Is your husband really running for president?" I said, "Yeah, he is." He said, "Why are you here? Nobody cares about us here." And so this is my story. I shared a little bit about my coming out story, how I felt like nobody was showing up for me, nobody cared about me, questioning if people in politics even cared about me, or if there was a space for me. And we had a really great conversation. At the end, he was walking away and he was like, "You do me a favor, when you make it to the White House, don't forget me." And I think about that kid every day. And I hope that we're doing enough to continue showing up for everyone. And touring the center out in Oakland, and even showing up right here in South Bend. Every time I've gone to a center, I think we tallied up over 100 LGBTQ centers and homeless service providers together that I toured. As most people know, or maybe don't know, 40% of homeless youth in our country identify as LGBTQIA. Two things that were really important or very close to my story, and I wanted to make part of my time out there on the campaign trail was showing up for people and just listening. I think half of the work is just showing up, and I wanted to make sure that people knew where our campaign stood, what we cared about, and what we valued, and especially many stories that people don't hear, whether it's trans women of color who, you know, are climate refugees in our own country, being forced out of their city because of a hurricane, bust into another city and facing discrimination even from religious organizations that get federal dollars, not allowing them to sleep in the bunk of their gender identity, not allowing them to wear clothes based on their identity. I met a really brilliant and remarkable young trans woman out in California when I was touring the desert out there. And we talked about how hard it is to find employment and housing. I met with kids in Tulsa, Oklahoma, New Orleans. I sat down with kids all across this country and shared my story and listened to theirs. And really, for a long time in my life, thought about how I kept a lot of those things locked up inside, you know, what it felt like to run away, feeling like an embarrassment. I went to college right after I came out and fumbled the ball there quite a few times, just trying to get on my feet, and slowly realized on the campaign trail, like, those stories aren't unique to me. They're uniquely American, that there are millions of other people, especially queer youth out there, who are living a very similar story. And then I brought a lot of those stories back to you in the campaign, and I just wanted to go out there and try to do as much work as I could, promising, you know, kids that it really does get better, and it can get better, and that you and I were committed to doing everything we could to try to make it better. Even though I know, you know, when you're a teenager and people are telling you it gets better, it kind of sounds like a, you know, a crock of BS. But I wanted to look people in the eye and tell them, you know, this is why we're doing this. And I also remember that couple that you and I met, I forget what state we were in, but they had driven like 8 hours to come see us because they were so terrified that somebody in their hometown might recognize both of them there. And that if they were even being, you know, seen supporting the gay candidate, that might, you know, reveal their secret. And so many people in our country are still being forced into the closet, being forced deeper into the closet. And pride is just another way, just like it was on the campaign, for us to think about how we want to do the most work that we can do to help those people bust those closet doors down and make it a safe country, a loving country, an accepting country for everyone to be in.
It was so amazing hearing the stories that you bring back, and learning about the important work that centers do, like the ones we're featuring tonight, and just around the country. It's so moving to hear kind of one life at a time, rather than the abstract. What a difference it makes. And you know, it's also one of the reasons why it's so important to continue to back LGBTQ candidates, which has been a big part of what we're doing with Win the Era. We had a great event yesterday. We were with Sharice Davids, member of Congress from Kansas. I mean, this shows you the power of the vote and the progress that can be made. Extraordinary leader, woman of color, who represents the community so well too. Earlier today, we did an event with Gina Ortiz-Jones. She's in Texas. She's going to flip a red seat blue very soon, we think, and served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and is able to speak to that experience. And tonight, and I think he's joined us. We've got another candidate that I'm really proud to be teaming up with, Malcolm Kenyatta in Pennsylvania. Not just candidate, he's in office, and we got to make sure he stays there. And as soon as I called him to let him know that Win the Era wanted him on that list of candidates we were backing, the first thing he said wasn't about himself. It was about all the other candidates in his caucus that he wants us to help him help. Because he's got that sense of teamwork. Y'all remember teamwork was one of the big rules of the road, one of the values we really cared about in Feed for America, and Malcolm represents that. If you've looked at him on social media, you can see the powerful voice for doing the right thing on everything from, sorry, that's Buddy just shaking one off there. Everything from doing the right thing on pandemic resilience to being a really important and needed voice as we have come to confront, Buddy's, all right.
Buddy's opening the curtains.
Basically trying to jump out the window. All right. Well, anyway, I don't want to belabor the introduction, because if you haven't seen him yet, you're going to be really impressed with Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. Is he with us on the line yet?
I am. Thank you.
There you are.
Hey,
good seeing you.
Chasten, hey, Mayor Pete. Before we start, I would get in trouble at home if Matt can't say hi. This is my partner, Dr. Matt, who wants to say hi.
Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having him.
And all right, it's a double date. This is great.
Yeah, and we're both on the Polo crew here. You and Chatten.
Yeah, listen, I am not getting dressed up again. I mean, I did that for a year and a half every day, and I'm done.
I feel it.
That's right.
You earned it.
Thank you.
Take care, y'all.
Thanks for popping in, man. Malcolm, I know you're burning the candle at both ends, doing such important work in government campaigning too. We were able to do an event with some of your Pennsylvania colleagues recently, but I think some of the folks on this call, this might be the first time they're getting to know you. So maybe just share a little bit about your story as well as what's going on the ground there in such an important state, Pennsylvania, where you serve.
Well, absolutely. So thank you for letting me do that. Now I'm in good shape here at home. But also thank you for what you did on the call. You know, as much as you talked about me talking about teamwork, you know, as soon as I asked, you said yes. And you're using the platform that you built to really lift up voices. And they were doing something on social media called sort of pass the mic. And you've been doing that even after you left the campaign. And that says a lot about you. And I was listening to Chasten just a second ago talk about some of these stories. And I said it on the call, but I want to say it to this audience. Really thank you for what you're doing. I know you didn't run necessarily to make history, but by virtue of you running and of Chasten, you being so involved and engaged, every candidate that runs after you, it's a little bit easier because the American public has been able to see that it really is about the quality and the values that you have and about the ideas that you bring forth. And that's really what I've been trying to do here in the heart of North Philly. I represent the 181st district in Philadelphia. If folks know Temple University, that's right in the heart of my district. And it's the third poorest district in the Commonwealth. There are parts of my district where the average annual income is under $10,000 a year. And just think about that for folks. You know, some people spend $10,000 going on a vacation, $10,000 a year, folks who are working hard, trying to take care of their families. And I really come from a family of folks who were incredibly active. They didn't have a lot of money, but they recognized the power of us using our voice and using our lived experience. And when I, decided to raise my hand and run for office, which is a scary proposition, I'll never forget. I was sitting. Matt lived in LA at the time, and I feel like I saved him from the West Coast and brought him over here to Philly. And I was talking about all the different reasons why I wouldn't be a good candidate for office, all the different ways that who I was and the experience I had really disqualified me from representing, my neighbors and the folks in my community. But what I came to recognize through that conversation and through conversations with folks in my district knocking on doors is that all the things that I thought disqualified me actually qualified me to be in those rooms and to be in those spaces and to bring a perspective that's not there. And when I walk into a committee room with locked hair, coming from a working poor family, having lost both of my parents even before I turned 30, knowing what it means to my first job was at 12, helping my family, pay the bills in the house, because that's sort of what we had to do. Coming from a family of folks who are adopted, being the son of a social worker, a mom who's a home health care aide, all those different experiences actually perfectly position me to go into spaces where most of the folks in the room are cis, straight, white guys who are millionaires, who certainly aren't thinking about the folks in my community who are struggling to get by on a daily basis. And I'll just end with this point. A lot of folks have been asking me, and I'm sure asking you, about the protest against police violence and about these tough conversations, but critically important conversations we're having about racial justice in this country. It's ironic, but really not so ironic that this is happening during Pride Month, because Pride wasn't about Coca-Cola or whoever else wrapping their product in a rainbow flag. It really was about a response to police violence against our community. And unfortunately, we saw yesterday, just in New York, one of my best friends is a producer of Pride in New York. And while they were doing a virtual Pride, the police were tear gassing Black trans folks in another part of New York yesterday. And so there's a lot of work to be done. But I recognize that when we step up, when all of us put our lived experience at the fore, we can really change things.
Thanks for sharing that, and I think folks on the call, if they hadn't already had a chance to see, now understand why we're so inspired by your work. And we had a bunch of questions come in, and your comments anticipated some of them, but maybe we could unpack them a little more because I think these are so important. Andrew is in Austin. And he said, how do you view the importance of Pride? So building on some of what you just shared about Pride's origins, what do you think about when you think about Pride now, and how's that playing out for the people that you serve in Pennsylvania?
I think the power of Pride this year really is what I just said, that folks aren't, we're having to celebrate now virtually because of this pandemic and the real mismanagement, to say it nicely, of what we've been getting from President Trump right now. But people have not used that as an excuse to say, I'm not going to be involved and engage. Dr. King's daughter, Bernice, if you don't follow her on Twitter, you should. She's really good at tweeting and at activism. But she had a tweet that really stuck with me that said, sending a tweet is the work. There's always this idea of the work, and what is the work? Sending that tweet is the work. Having that tough conversation is the work. Using the voice and the platform that you have, all of that is the work. And so we haven't been able to necessarily get out the way we want, and to, physically in a group, show our pride and to talk about what pride means to us. But folks have been doing it online. Folks have been doing it in their homes. Folks have been doing it in their communities. And so that's really what I think about when I think about Pride. I think about how activism can really change things.
Well said. And yeah, you've talked a lot about how Pride's origin is in protest, and
Right.
even last year we're talking about Pride as a march, but this year coming at this moment of reckoning with racial justice. Has that been part of the conversations you've been having these last few days?
And Malcolm, I'm glad you brought up that instance in New York the other day, which was so disgusting to see. We think about where we started, where our movement got its origins. Trans women of color standing up for us, right? For all of us, for our entire community, the entire acronym, saying enough. We demand to be seen, we demand to be heard, and we demand equal rights. And I think, logos and brands, they all like to put out the pride flags and make it into a big thing and a festival and a celebration, which is great. We should celebrate our existence. We should celebrate the fact that we're here, alive, in love, and proud of who we are. But pride is also about demanding space and taking up space. And as we saw yesterday, for so many people, especially even people in our own community, they are not given equal space and equal attention and treatment, fair treatment, in our community and in our country. And I get very concerned when pride starts to get far removed from our origins and removed from what we are actually here to do. The Supreme Court decision last week, for example, was a monumental decision, but isn't it also sort of frustrating that we're celebrating basic human rights? And we have to understand that that decision didn't go as far as covering everything that we need to accomplish.
Part of why we need
in this,
equality. Yeah.
Right. And that's what pride is about. It's about going out there and saying, do you see me? I am deserving of equal rights. I am deserving of this space and of this love, right? And it's not just about these wedding bands. And for many people in our community, for many people, in this acronym, marriage wasn't the goal. For many people in our community, the goal is still to stay alive, to be alive, to not be brutalized and murdered in their own community. And until everyone sees that right, we are not done. And that is what pride needs to stay focused on.
Absolutely. And, Chasten just, reminds me, because I do think we need to use every moment we can to sort of, say the names of the folks who we've lost. And Dominique Remy Fells was brutally murdered right here in Philadelphia, a trans woman of color. And it seems year after year, we are hitting an ugly milestone in terms of folks who we've lost to the hatred that unfortunately is being stoked at the highest levels. And so, Mayor Pete, again, when you left, and I've been on the side of a campaign that didn't end the way I wanted, but you could have just gone home with the dogs and with Chasten and sort of put your head in the sand. But you got right out there supporting a guy who spent his entire career fighting for our equality. And Vice President Biden, I think, is going to be such a contrast to this man who said over and over again, he's going to be the most pro-equality president. But the first thing he did was try to remove all of us from the website, refuse to add us to the census, try to get rid of our trans service members, and on and on. And so, that's incredibly powerful. Not that we only, just say their names and remember them, but President Obama, who's known of saying things eloquently, say you have to protest and vote. And, we've been really doing both, and we need to be reminded of both.
It's so well said, and that's why we're here right now, and why we're so proud to be teaming up with you and so many others doing the right thing around the country. We've got a bunch of questions that came in. Here's kind of a fun one. I love being surrounded by books all day, since we're confined to quarters a lot of the time. So Stephen is in Cedar Falls. Says, what books do you suggest for individuals to read to learn more on the history of pride in the LGBTQIA+ movement? Why don't you go ahead and start us off? Mayor Pete, both of us fell in love with teachers. And so Matt's also a teacher. And so I'm surrounded by books and all the time, all over. So I'll say a fun one and then a more serious one. So James Baldwin is one of my favorite authors of all time. And it's so interesting looking at clips of him, because everything he's saying really could have been pulled from a clip right now. And so read anything James Baldwin, but Native Son was actually the first book my dad ever gave me, and little did he know later, and that'll be an important book for me. But the other one is Guru. Ru Paul wrote a book called Guru, which is a little table book, but talking about the power of living in your authentic self. And and I laugh about it, but just being authentic, it's kind of basic, but we get these dueling messages, particularly as young people. Be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. And then throughout your life, it's like, but don't be yourself like that. Don't be yourself like that. Be yourself a little differently. And Ru is a great, first of all, RuPaul's Drag Race keeps me sane. But Ru is a great, I just think, cultural icon, and somebody who sort of talks about this idea of authenticity in a way that's incredibly authentic. And it's actually a really good book. It's great, and you're right. James Baldwin is always right on time. I mean, you look at what he was talking about 50 years ago, the opening letter in The Fire Next Time, and sometimes I think because he was such an important Black voice, a little work needs to be done to rediscover what he meant as a queer voice too, whether it's fiction like Giovanni's Room or other things that he wrote. We've been I was just asked to read an advanced copy of books. I don't know if it's out yet, but there's an incredibly rich history of the struggle for marriage equality coming out, called, I think, The Engagement by Sasha Eisenberg, and it's definitely going to be worth the read. I suppose I'd be remiss if I didn't point to a seminal work of biography coming out.
No, we don't. I think
yes, Chasten will all be buying the book. Yeah.
Thank you. What was the name of the documentary we just watched on James Baldwin?
Oh yeah, it's incredible. I Am Not Your Negro, it's called, and it's,
yes, that's really
yeah, amazing moments when he was at the debate in Cambridge, and this whole, a lot of it I guess has to do with a draft that was never completed, but writing about his experience with Medgar Evers and coming up, it's extraordinary.
I also will just say I had a conversation, one of these like Twitter thread conversations. Kathy right here in South Bend, who owns our independent bookstore, put together a phenomenal selection and resource for local parents and queer youth, and so did our public library. So even if you're just lost, make sure you reach out to your independent bookstore right now, because one, they're struggling for business. We really need to support them. But two, they can really help you do that work. I've been enjoying like Eric Servini's book that just came out, The Deviance War, and Richie's book, Gay Like Me, was really special. I've been slowly picking through Justin Lance Black's memoir. But then I, reach out to Kathy and see her store here, and she's got 50 books. So, anything from the Stonewall Reader on. So I hope people will reach out to their local independent bookstore, and go there for some resources as well.
For sure. Yeah. Hayden here in Indiana, from Indianapolis, had a question that I'd love to hear your thoughts on too. I'll take a stab at it because I know this speaks to so many experiences. He says, my archdiocese just announced that transgender students will not be welcome at area Catholic schools if they do not live within the teachings of the Catholic Church. How do we reach and convince those with firm religious convictions of the value of inclusivity and acceptance? And I think that question on Hayden's mind is on a lot of our minds, and certainly here in South Bend and so many communities we visit on the campaign trail, where, you know, what I found is that there is a chance to transcend this idea that to be religious is to be anti-queer or vice versa. And I think it's online somewhere. The sermon actually that Father Brian gave at our wedding spoke to this really touchingly here at St. James. But not everybody's got the good fortune to be part of an affirming and accepting faith community like that. And to me, the best thing we've had going for us has always been just compassion, the basic intuition that we all have as humans, and certainly that's so important to so many faith traditions about the importance of just dignity and regard for one another as human beings, and taking that as the starting point. I've been amazed by how many people have grown and have found their way, sometimes 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, but found their way to what I believe is the right side of history, and also just to a more compassionate place. But you're an elected official. I'm sure you've encountered this challenge. So I wonder, Malcolm, if you have any thoughts on what Hayden was bringing up.
Absolutely, Hayden. And Hayden, thanks for asking that question. I'll tell this story very, very quickly, but that question is deeply tied to my own coming out story, or really my story of being outed. I was ordained in my local church to preach and done funerals, weddings, all of it at the age of 13. And I came home, I was 16, came home from Bible study, and the message that day actually happened to be about honesty. And I opened the front door, and my mom asked, "Are you gay?" And for whatever reason, maybe it was just the message I just heard, I had the courage to say yes. A friend had outed me to my mom, and my mom's response was laced with a lot of the same vile stuff that we hear on the right. And we didn't talk for a long time. And, you know, thank God we were able to rebuild our relationship in a real way before she passed. But I tell that story because it took a lot of prayer on her part, but it also was love. And there's a redeeming quality of love. Love covers a multitude of faults. And the love that she had for me covered some of those faults, and actually helped her to not to just have this tepid tolerance of, you know, it's okay if you exist, but a real love. And, you know, I'm happy that, you know, after her stroke, she was able to meet Matt before she passed and sort of give us the whole blessing and the whole thing. But I would say to Hayden, maybe your school won't change, but there are folks in your faith community, folks in your family who, by your bravery, will change their entire mindset, because it's so difficult to hate up close. And when you recognize that hate is keeping you from your son in this case, or others, it really helps you to rethink. And she had a rethink, you know, very much a Paul moment of complete transformation. And I think a lot of people can have that moment of transformation if we do the incredibly hard work, but the brave work of just being who we are. So thank you, Hayden.
Well said. And I think one of the really important parts of your story was how love can win out, right? Across, you know, whether it's in families or in faith communities, but there's no guarantees. But it's so important to believe.
I ran away from my family because I was convinced I'd lose everything, and I was so lucky that, you know, they reached back out. My parents reached back out. They were terrified for me. They were also really confused. They didn't know anything about what it meant to be gay. And the thing that I'm so grateful for is how patient they were. It required a lot of patience on my part, also required a lot of patience on theirs, because they had to ask a lot of questions. They had to learn a lot. They had to unlearn a lot of things that they had been taught, things that they had believed. And, you know, the thing I'd say to Hayden is most people come around, hopefully, but there also might be a moment in your life, and maybe even now, where you also have to realize if you will fight and fight and fight for people to treat you and see you as an equal human being. And some of them just might not. They might never get there. And your family can also be chosen. You get to choose who you keep close to you. And so if you ever get to that point, it is okay to say, hey, if you don't see me as an equal human being, then I don't think this is going to work out for me. And that's okay. That's okay too.
So I know we're coming up on our time. I want to fit one more question in, and here's probably a good one to end on from Ryan in Houston. Ryan says, what do you hope we can accomplish in the next 365 days in the continued fight for equality for the LGBTQ plus community? I like thinking about the next 365 days, because think about, again, one half of 1 year, right, brought us so, I mean, we're at the midpoint of a year. Everything that from the impeachment of the president to the outpouring of anguish over racial justice to the settling of the nomination contest in favor of Joe Biden, to the China, Russia, to the pandemic. It's all that's just in the first half of this year. So think about what can happen in a matter of months. And we know for that the first 4 months of that 365 days, I think we all know the work we've got to do electorally, but then we have an opportunity to deliver real policy priorities that make people safer and build that sense of belonging. And would love to know from your perspective, especially knowing that so much of the action is actually in the States, Representative, what you see as the potential for what we might be saying when we're coming together on the last day of Pride 2021.
So I'm going to echo a bit what you said. I think we absolutely not only have to elect Joe Biden, but it has to be a resounding repudiation of these 4 years of Trump. And I don't know, you're busy already, but at least in my mind, you better be in the administration in some way, working hard on continuing to do what you need to do. But also, I'll say it in this way: so many of the things that America says about herself, and that we say about ourselves, these ideas of equity and freedom and justice and liberty, so many of them were written in a hot summer like this one here in Philadelphia. But we've never truly lived up to that. I don't even think we've come close in a lot of respects. But this is an opportunity for us to make real all the ideas that our founders had, make them real in our lifetime. We're all created equally, but let's get to a point where we're all treated equally. We're all able to live our lives in an equal, full way. And so my hope is that next year we have folks like Hayden and others who are getting involved in their schools and their communities and their local community group, maybe in some instances actually stepping up to run for office, because I think the way we're going to get to that more equal society is if we have people from a variety of different lived experiences. Even if you're LGBTQ, we're not all the same. We all have different backgrounds. We need folks from a variety of different lived experiences in those rooms, because I promise you, the conversations are different when you're there, when we're there. This primary was different because you were there, and Chasten, because you were brave enough to share your story, and you were brave enough to share your family with us. And I saw somebody say, Team Pete is family, and you really have built a family built around those principles. But we have to rebuild the American family so that equal opportunity is not only aspirational, it's real for all of us. And I think by next year, we'll be a lot closer. And hopefully this guy who's in office right now will be as, I don't know, I almost said President Biden, it's a Freudian slip. But Vice President Biden says, will be an aberration. I really hope that he is. And I hope that we get about the work of having true liberty and justice for all of us.
Well said. And what a powerful note to end on. And hopefully everybody on this call, if you didn't already know, you can see why we are so enthusiastic in our support for Representative Kenyatta, to have that kind of leadership. And I think he's going to be a leader for a long time. I'm finally old enough to say things like, this younger generation doing great things, not just the trail that you blazed as the first Black gay elected official in the chamber that you serve in Pennsylvania, but just as somebody who so eloquently speaks to the moment. And I just can't wait to see the leadership you're going to continue to offer. So thanks for being with us tonight. Thanks for what you're doing. Everybody on this call, we know what we've got to do. Supporting LGBTQ candidates like Malcolm Kenyatta. Today's a fundraising deadline. Supporting others that we believe in, supporting great causes and organizations like the Oakland LGBTQ Center, like the Ali Forney Center, I'm impressed you got that website first. That's South Bend Initiative, the LGBTQ Center, right here in our own South Bend, Indiana, and so many others. I love that idea that this is a family that that can all support each other. Chasten, lucky to have you tonight. Any other thoughts before?
Oh, thanks, Pete. Great to be here with you. No, I just
come anytime.
What's that?
We should do this more often.
I know, right? I'm usually just downstairs making sure the dogs are quiet. Malcolm, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you to not only the 3 centers that we were featuring tonight, but to every single LGBTQ and equality center throughout the United States who's showing up every day and doing the work. It's what I was amazed by every day out on the campaign trail. People in pockets of this country you've never even heard of, going to work every day, rolling up their sleeves and showing up for some of the most vulnerable people in our community. And I have to, we owe so much to the people who showed up and fought for us that we'll never know. And we owe so much to the people who are out there doing the work day in and day out. It's a privilege to be part of this community, and happy Pride to everyone. Happy Pride to you. I love you.
Right.
I like being married too.
Right back at you.
All right, thank you both.
It's good seeing
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, and everybody, thanks for the great work. We had a fantastic quarter. We wound up being able to support 24 candidates. We did more than 17 events. We have now raised millions of dollars for candidates and causes we believe in. And on a lighter note, I'm going to throw in a little bonus material just because you got to see this.
Oh my gosh.
If I can figure out how to do this without pushing the wrong button. Buddy has somehow inserted himself behind the curtain. So with this moment of zen.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
Hey.
Buddy says thank you and happy Pride. Just love being part of this family, and I can't wait to see what the next weeks and months will bring. Take care, everybody.